what actually works, what to do next. Here's the breakdown from this week's Friday Focus on KGCI, Real Estate on Air.
Seven-figure success starts when you start thinking like a CEO. Welcome to the John Kitchens Coach Podcast Experience. This is your host, John Kitchens. Get ready to think bigger and transform your business into a path to lasting freedom. What's up?
Hey.
I've been looking forward to this. I was looking forward to it even coming out of Seattle. And you said something that like made me, I sat back down and I was thinking about it. Right. And I want to get into this with you a little bit later, because I think what you're doing, like, and that's what I told, who did I tell? I told the boys probably, I was like, you want to pay attention to where EXP is going, just go pay attention to what Kendall's doing. And just everything kind of, and I'll get out there, kind of what it reminds me of, but you said something and I was asking you a business idea and a question just to get, because I know you're going to have an opinion, which is why I wanted to ask you. And you talked about addressable market, and I want you to clarify, because what I heard, because we were talking about, business brokers, whatever. And then we were talking about it. You go, listen, how we're thinking about it is there's only 4 million in the addressable market. I said, wait, hold on, Kendall, are you telling me that you're making decisions based upon number of home sales instead of number of agents? So talk me through this kind of how you talked about addressable market with home sales versus agent count.
Well, it's actually all of the above, right? I mean, because when it comes to home sales, that's units, right? And when we think about units and we think about, it depends too on what the question is, right? And what the business opportunity is and what and I'm always talking about, okay, what's the addressable market? What's the return on investment? In fact, I had a conversation with an agent about this the other day. And it's not just about like, is it worth it for us to do something or not do something, but really just those deeper conversations and strategic analyses that has to be done when you're thinking about where to spend your time, money, and energy, right? And it's even more complex at a corporate level because the spend, the effort, the investigation, all of that is so much bigger at this level than anything else I've ever done. Of course, even though I have been a broker owner, I've been a team owner, I've been a top producing agent, working at this level at XP, has just really upped my skill set and up to my knowledge base and up to my strategic thinking. And so when depending on what you're talking about, the addressable market can be the agent count or the agent population, but it also has to coincide with what's the opportunity when you're thinking about the agent population, right? Knowing that the majority of agents are selling, anywhere from 1 to 4 houses a year, 1 to 4 units, compared to top teams or commercial agents, for example. How much business are they doing? And how much of that makes up the marketplace. So it's just more along the lines of, I honestly don't remember specifically what you and I were talking about, but I talk about addressable market and I think about it a lot. And I think about all of that, all those moving parts when I'm thinking about whether we should bring in a new trusted provider for EXP solutions, what the technology tools that we bring into our tech stack versus, those that we offer independently to our agents. So thinking about all those different things, but I think it's important to, even as you parcel out agents, depending on what you're talking about, what's the likelihood of them being able on a transaction to be able to actually effectively utilize whatever that tool service is, because some tools are connected to the transaction. So that's why it all matters.
Yeah. And that makes sense. That really does, right? Because you can go back and then, what product do they have? How much real product are they actually going to be able to sell in this year, 18, 24, 36 months, as you're kind of thinking.
Yeah. So, some tools are specific to unit, right? And again, if you're dealing with teams tend to do more units than a single agent typically, right? And so the addressable market, even on a team, might, like from an agent perspective, might be smaller, but their opportunity to effectuate on that product or service, because it's tied to transaction, could be greater than, a different agent in a different circumstance.
Yeah. And I want to come around to this question, kind of what you're focused on, what you're doing. And I was kind of thinking about listening to you in Seattle and everything else that you're doing. There's a book, and I tried to recall the book with you. I found the book. And so it is called Stacking the Deck, by David Pottruck, I think is the author. And essentially I found that book and started reading it when we were starting to figure out partner with the brokerage in Texas. Mm-hmm. And when we came to Texas, we just tried to emulate the model that we had built in Oklahoma, in Lawton. Well, polar opposite markets, right? Small town, Lawton, Oklahoma, 100,000 in the entire county, 4,000 on a great year, typically 3,500 total opportunities in the market, home sales, total transactions. And so then you come into DFW, right? So we had built a very, very massive brand, and you couldn't go anywhere without seeing us, or like, who's the top agent? They're going to say us, one or two. And so you get down into DFW and like, nobody cares, right? That just, it's a completely different game. So we learned quickly what we were trying to do, salaried listing agent model, it wasn't working. So we then said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We were working out of the NAEA office, and we had a conversation with our lender, who had an office that was absolutely amazing, but he had the backside. So he had an entire floor, and he just had his mortgage company on one side. He didn't have anything. It just became available. And so we're like, listen, we're going 9 miles south, and we're going to restructure and rebuild this whole thing. And that's when we went partner. And, our promise was, we guarantee you four new listings in your market service area. So you were signing up. You actually had to write us a check to come on board, and you got your market service area. But we followed that book, really kind of what they were talking about, which is completely off org. So it made me think kind of the path that you're navigating, completely off org. You have your own marketing team. You have everything that you're doing to operate within the ecosystem, but you're over here just figuring things out. So my question then, as I'm listening to you kind of go through the addressable market, and you're thinking through things strategically with EXP Solutions, who are you thinking about? And the reason I ask this, what type of agent are you thinking about? Because that statistic, and you can maybe put some, correct me on this, but it's 98, almost 99% of agents at EXP that sell more than 20 homes a year, they don't leave.
Yeah.
Is that the right retention metric?
That's a Leo question. He memorizes those numbers. I'm not that great at that. I'm not going to lie. Right. I'm impressed by his memory of the stats. I don't remember what the stat is, but it is a very strong stat regarding our productive agents, for sure. And I think actually the number of units is actually, I don't even know if it's as high as 20. I think it's actually even lower, but I'm sure at the higher it goes, the more retention, the stronger our retention rate becomes. However, to answer your question, like, who am I thinking about when I'm thinking about EXP Solutions? Mm-hmm. Honestly, it depends on the solution. So one of the things that I'm looking at when a opportunity comes in is, who is the target audience? Who is the agent that this tool is, service, SaaS, whatever it is going to speak to the loudest, right? And so for me, it's important that while we do have an amazing, we have several amazing communities in our agent population. You have an amazing group of team leaders and teams, right? I mean, we have the top teams in the country at EXP, and they do phenomenal business. What I find the most interesting about top teams is they typically live in their own ecosystem, right? Mm-hmm. They have their own set of tools. They typically use a lot of the same tools because team leaders talk. and they like to leverage trusted tools. I did the same thing when I started my team. I went and interviewed a bunch of my friends who were team leaders, got a sense of like, what tools are you using? And I did the same thing with my brokerage, where I started my companies with what I believed to be and what I had learned at that time was the best in class tool at that time, regardless of cost. So that was something that was really important to me. I knew I wanted to invest in the best in class tool that would scale with me, because I never intended to stay where I was at, which is a different mindset, I think, than most people getting into a business. They think about, what can I afford today, not what I need for tomorrow. And so they find themselves getting stuck or having to transition tools later in the game, things of that nature. But they live in our team leaders typically live in I won't say a closed ecosystem, but typically they have and drive their own tools. The next group of amazing leaders that we have are top producers, right? And these top producers tend to have their own systems. And then you have your up and coming agents, and you have your new licensees. And we have strong populations in all of the above, right? What I find my goal is to find tools that I know are important to those major, right? Some of those, like for example, our up and comer agents, they are looking for opportunities to, what is the tool that they should be looking for, right? Or that they should be leveraging. So, they're open. And also, so are new licensees. They also tend to be pretty open with what tools that they are open to exploring and learning. And so I'm always looking for things that, how do I help agents sell more houses, right? And be more productive, regardless of what group category they're in. And number two, how do we upgrade the client experience, right? Like, so what are the tools that are going to help them do more in less time and more efficiently, right? And more beautifully or more effectively, right? So those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about, is how is it going to serve the various populations? So I never really have any one agent in mind, avatar, but I do always associate an avatar with each tool before I agree to bring them into our world, as well as when it comes to marketing them. That's actually literally a part of our process that my marketing team has to decide and determine, who are we talking to when we leverage this tool.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm always curious, and that's why I love this series, right? The Agent to See It, because I just love how, how do you make decisions, right? How decisions are made and kind of the process that you go through. And everybody has the process, and some are aware of it, some are not. And so sell more houses, upgrade the experience. At this level, Kendall, how important is it to have kind of with those, different resources and things that you're bringing in? How important is it to still have core value alignment with those companies and our core values?
I think it's always important, right? I mean, I think we have 9 core values. There's a few that always kind of pop out to me that really resonate. So like transparency is one, that we're agile is another one, for example. So, because we're such a fast moving, innovative company, those things definitely matter. So, when we get a ton of applications, I'll say, to become a solution, and we do run them through, a matrix, and we are investigating them. We also will investigate who the CEO is. Like, that's part of the process that my team is supposed to, be vetting these solutions through. Now, I will tell you, I inherited several solutions, so I can't speak to what was done in the past, but I know since I took over last year, I spent all of Q4 just rewriting the entire program, and it's in writing, it's documented, but like we have a fully documented, systematized process, right? So that is important to me, from the application through to launch, through the ongoing marketing and reviews. We do QMRs with our trust provider. So every quarter we're checking in, going over the numbers, how are things going, and how can we improve and upgrade. the marketing that we do for the following quarter. So those are all puzzle pieces, and then that we put together. And then, we are always fine tuning and improving the process as we go along, because, you do things and then you realize like, hey, we could actually do that more efficiently. So let's try it this way. Or, hey, we tried that. We realize there's a gap here. Let's build a system and an SOP for that. And it's really funny for me to even use these words, because I'm an entrepreneur and a former visionary. Can we transition to this? Because this is kind of funny to me.
Let's do it.
Because this is thinking about as a CEO to like someone who worked with a CEO. My husband was the operator / integrator. I was the visionary, in our past, in the real estate space, before me coming into this role here. And my husband used to get so upset with me because, one, he wanted me to write stuff down and I refused. Like, get it out of your brain, Kendall. That's not a system, right? Like, get it on paper. I refused. And, or to systematize things, or that certainly stop changing it. Like, every time I was like, oh, I got a better idea. Let's do this. Like, and he would call them like dropping grenades, like in the meetings. And I was like, no, but this is a really good idea. We're going to.
Is he a processor? He
was. Yeah. Like he's analytical. He's also a lawyer. So he's just more process oriented than I was. Right. Yeah. But this is the beauty of working with your opposite, right? In terms of like your strengths and your weaknesses, because he would make me do roles in the company that I hated, because he's like, well, you need to know how this works if you're going to be the owner of the company. And that was his lesson. My lesson was, I don't need to hire. I don't need to do that, because I'm going to hire to my weaknesses.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. I default to your thinking too.
I'm leverage. I'm all about leverage. Yes. I'm like, I don't need to learn how to do it if I can pay someone to do it for me and they do it better than I ever could do it. Right. Like, I'd rather do that. So we taught each other is what we've learned. Like, he taught me things, I've taught him things. And so now coming into this role at EXP, where I'm a leader of my department, but I'm definitely a general or a football. I don't know anything about ranks, but I report to someone who is our true leader. And my job is to effectuate their goals. And that has been like super enlightening, empowering, challenging, but not in a bad way, like in a good way. And also, like, it's really helped me to take what I know how to do and all the skills I have from my entire educational background, and bringing it forward in a real way. And so it's been a lot of fun hearing, because, Leo doesn't necessarily come to me and say, Kendall, I want this, and this. Really what he does is he plants a seed. Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful thing.
I see that in him. I see that his leadership style is more of that. Yeah.
Yeah. He'll plant a seed and he'll say, Kendall, I think I want X. And I'm like, okay, give me a minute. And I think about it and he allows me to still envision his vision and bring it to life, and he will care about certain big picture things. He might give me a couple of guardrails. But then after that, he sets me free to go operationalize it, to put it together, to think about the systems and process, think about the departments. And that has been probably one of the coolest experiences I have had. And the fact that he trusts me to do it has been really one of the best experiences I've had at EXP.
I picked up on that pretty quick. I picked up on that just, even you coming into Cleveland last year, I picked up on it. And you are operating, stacking the deck operation. It's textbook to what you're doing. It's really awesome to see. And, thinking back to kind of those decisions and those filters, the value, you lined out a couple of them. The big one that really resonated with me with EXP, where after proof, I don't question anything anymore, although you should still always kind of question it a little bit. However, if we're using the values as guardrails to make better decisions, the one that really resonates with me the most is sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And, that goes back from the very first day, the very first meeting encounter with Glenn and Jason of, and I shared that story in Seattle, being able to sit and hear from them, but then able to see that in action in Orlando less than 6 months later. And then every decision after that was, is this going to be sustainable in the long run? And after you see it a couple times, then you just don't question it. They're like, hey, we're making a move here. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm sure because it's sustainable, right? It's going to allow us to continue, into the future. You did say something, the vet out process of CEOs. Is there a particular trait that you really resonate with or pay attention to the most, that like, if they don't have this, it's a hard no, or I really want to see this in the CEO and their leadership team before we align with them?
Good question. I'm actually looking for why not to work with them as opposed to why to. So to be perfectly honest, I'm definitely looking for red flags. So that's important to me. And also, I think it's important when you're working with a good leader, because it's not always the CEO I'm dealing with, depending on the size of the company. When we're vetting these tools, we're looking for leaders who are truly committed to the ultimate client, right? Which is our agents. And so sometimes these tools and services service the agent directly. Some of them, they service the agent's clients, the customer. And so, but at the end of the day, the agent is the hub, right? Where all things really kind of matter for EXP, right? It really comes down to the agent at our company and the value and the importance and how much we want to support them. So I'm always looking for vendors and leaders who recognize, like, it's not just your relationship with EXP at a corporate level. Like, I don't need you to kiss my butt. Like, that's not, my ego does not require that at all. So like, don't say things because you think that's what I want to hear as far as like me. Say things that tell me, who the real MVP is, right? Like who the VIP is. So like when I hear from parties and I hear language that really respects and understands who the most valuable player is, which is the agent, that kind of stuff, like really, that resonates for me, because I want to make sure that the focus always stays there.
Yeah, 100%. And it's something just paying attention to lately, just kind of navigating, the terrain with AI and just navigating the waters. And, as we're getting closer to, whatever this may look like in the future, it really comes down to like agents. And, you look at ICPs, you look at the avatar process and everything. And it's at the end of the day, right? People want results, but they actually just want a job done. And so like, what job can this provide to help our agents? But the thing, even Dan Kennedy is talking about it a lot. And it's like, listen, if you focus on the competition, you're going to lose. You have to focus on the customer. And I think, in this regard, if they're coming in and they're, obsessed with the customer, then I can see, hey, this possibly could work. But to me, it'd be a red flag too. Like if they're not even talking about the customer.
Yeah. And, you talked about AI and all that stuff. That's also a really like fascinating topic to me. So if we want to talk about that too, but it is so important that when you're thinking about a customer or the client, right? It's no longer about customer service. It's about client experience. Yeah. And I think like that is something that I've been trying to impress upon agents over and over and over again across my career, because a lot of agents, they even advertise, my customer service is so great. And I'm like, change your language, because think about what that actually means. Who calls customer service? Upset clients.
Upset every time.
Yeah. You don't call customer service unless you're upset, right? You're not calling customer service because everything was beautiful and great and it went according to plan. So why market the thing that already has a negative connotation in at least even subconsciously, if nothing else, in the mind of the person you're trying to impress. Rather focus on experience. And the other like defining point to that, I always remind people, is the difference between customer service is reactionary, client experience is proactive, right? It is something you do on the front end to prevent the need for customer service. You know what I mean? And so I would say start promoting the client experience and stack the deck in that manner. Like, what are the tools? What are the services? What are the experiences I want someone who works with me to have? And decide that before the transaction occurs.
Yeah.
And when you do that, that is when you start to have, better relationships with your clients, more repeat business, more referral, things of that nature. But also remember this, I would say to any agent leader listening, is that when it comes to client experience, it's not, because it's proactive, it's not random. It's intentional.
Very intentional.
It's documented, it's systematized, it's processed, it's scaled, it's leveraged, right? It's all of those things over, and hopefully also eventually over time, you get to be, because once you document, that's when you can leverage, right? And so, in fact, I was telling my own team, we're doing an exercise right now that I know they groaned as I told them we were going to start doing for the next 2 weeks. But I was like, listen, we have to slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
It is. I love that. And, as you're just kind of going through there with your background, right? Every word matters. So it's not even customer experience, it's client experience. And for us, that was J. Abraham 101. And he was like, listen, a customer is what you are to Walmart, right? Yeah, they just want to tack on. They want you to buy every little thing. They're trying to increase your transaction. Like a client is under your care, right? Like it's such a slight distinction, but it's a massive distinction between client and customer. So being able to use that, understand what a client is versus a customer, and then I'm so with you, right? It is 1000% about the experience.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw this grenade out there. It also does matter what state you're in, because legally client and customer have like legal definitions. And so you have
the attorney in there. Caveat.
Agents are like, no, I can't call them clients. They're customers in my state. Like, it's okay. Just know,
hey, listen,
every state it's different.
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, Kendall.
Yes,
come on.
I know. No, I can't help it. I'm so precise and oh my God, so bad.
So why real estate, right? Attorney by trade, you and your husband, law school, come to Florida. Like why real estate?
I get that question a lot. And the story is actually probably not that original, I would say, arguably, and probably not that complicated. I literally was bored with what I was doing. And I was at that time, so I practiced law for several years. I never wanted to be an attorney. But a lot of people who know me have heard the story, so I'll make it very brief. My mother was a doctor, and when I was a child, she raised me. She's like, JD, MD, PhD, pick one. She was an MD. I knew I didn't want to do that. I went to graduate school while I was in college. So while I was in high school, I went to college for a summer. And in college, I was a McNair scholar. So I went to graduate school while I was in college ahead, right? And so I picked up credits. And I realized that I was not mature enough for a PhD. But that was my ultimate goal, was to go that route. When I realized this, I said, you know what? I'm going to go to law school to buy myself some time so I can mature. I needed structure. I needed like semester, class, exam, next class.
That's the entrepreneur in you. You need some framework.
I needed framework and structure. I knew this at a very young age, like 19 years old. I figured myself out. So I knew where I would succeed and fail. So I used to do things that would set myself up for success. So I ended up going to law school, and I never intended to practice law. I didn't even register for the California bar because I just was not planning to go or to be a lawyer. But I met my husband there. And then he, has his influence
Sure.
and was like, I wanted to graduate and go to school, back to school. And he was like, no, you have school debt, which I did. I got a full actually scholarship to law school. Like it paid all 3 years of my tuition, but I would borrow money. I went to Europe for a summer. I went to the University of Bologna.
Entrepreneur in you. Yes.
I borrowed money to buy a laptop. That back then the laptops were super expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Borrowed money to live. So like I did come out of school with school debt. So he's like, hey, we have to pay our student loans. Like you can't borrow any more money. And I was like, shoot. So dream crushed. And if you know, that's a whole nother story. Dream crusher is my nickname for my husband. Didn't go to PhD. So I'm practicing law. I did criminal defense. I did jury trials. I did went to the jails. I mean, I did all that stuff. I did bankruptcy law. I did workers' comp insurance defense. I did like 3 different practice areas over the course of almost 10 years. And I was good at it. I just didn't enjoy it. And so I have this obsession with joy and peace. I never chased money. I've always chased from a career perspective, like peace of mind, happiness, like, do I enjoy what I do? And I learned that because my mother worked really hard, made a lot of money, but in my mind, she was not happy. And so that was always my like frame. Mm-hmm. So real estate was like, oh, we were buying houses. And I was like, oh, I like looking at houses. I'm gonna get my real estate license. I'm bored. It'll be something to do part-time. I'll sell 2 or 3 houses a year. People will hire me just because I'm a lawyer. Like all this foolishness was, again, I think like why it's unoriginal is because I think every new licensee has these like dreams of grandeur. Like they think real estate is something completely different than what it actually is. And we all have these big plans for our career and it's going to look a particular way. And then the world happens and it doesn't look anything like that.
Right.
So that happened to me, like everyone. I ended up getting my license and I went to every training my brokerage offered in the first 30 days. And I came out of that with 2 listings. My first closing was a listing. My first contract was a listing agreement. My first closing was a listing. I never looked back from that. I ended up hating looking at houses and showing homes. Like I didn't even work with buyers for the first 1.5 years, 2 years. I didn't know how. I was like, I don't have a process for that, but I had a process for listings. So I took a lot of listings and I did a lot of short sales and I just happened into something that I realized like within 30 to 45 days of signing on with my brokerage. And the very first listing I got, like, I loved it. I was like, this is for me. And I quit taking bankruptcy clients at the time. I basically told my husband, I'm done. I'm going to service the clients that I have. But I'm done. I'm not taking any new business. So all of my chapter 7s that I was working on appointments are all going to shift to you. And I'm going to solely focus on real estate. And I think it took my husband about 10 years to forgive me for abandoning him, I would say more or less. And, but I hit the ground running and I freaking loved it. And I was good at it. And it was that mix of skill set. And what's the most ironic of all of this is in law school, your first year, you take 2 classes. 2 of your required classes are real property and contracts. And I hated both. They were like my least favorite classes of all of law school. And then here I am.
Here you are. What was the lure or the enticement to jump on board with your role at EXP?
I don't know that there was, well, actually, I would say that the lure was working with Leo easily. Yeah. That's actually an easy answer. It was to work with Leo. I got exposed to Leo almost right away after coming to EXP. Like Veronica Figueroa's my sponsor at EXP, and I came over with my team. I sold my brokerage and came over with my team as a team leader. And she did a phenomenal job of making sure that I shook hands with the right people and that, she introduced me, to the upline. I mean, I got to meet Brent Gove really early on. And Jean Frederick, been in Jean's house, in Puerto Rico. Like she really did a great job exposing me to all the amazing leaders we have at EXP. and Leo being one of those. Glenn too. I was like, had Glenn's cell phone like really early on in that whole process, which I thought was crazy. Still think it's crazy. He does call me back when I call him or text him.
Yes.
And so with Leo, we were talking. I was also simultaneously during that time, a lot of the NAR stuff was happening, all the litigation, all of that. And so Leo and I really kind of bonded over having conversations about the future of the industry. And so we would have, I would call Leo for like advice about stuff and thoughts, and we would spitball ideas. And, it was really interesting time because he was kind of realizing, like, leaning in. And I kept saying, and I remember going to him and saying to him, Leo, we got to stand out as a leader. Like, you guys need to get really noisy. And I remember his first reaction, which was the one that I think every leader had, which is, well, we're part of active litigation. I can't talk about it, and I was like, I don't care. The industry needs a voice.
Yeah.
I was like, we need to get loud. And somewhere in between that and, his CEO title, he made the decision that he was going to become a voice, and he really became the voice. Right. But I don't even know if that was his original plan. I think his original plan was like, let me just start getting out there. I do have opinions about these things and I do care. And then, but he's risen up as the voice, and which has been so inspiring to watch and to be just a viewer of that whole evolution. But he was the reason, and also his previous job. So chief strategy officer was something that like I was really into, because I was like, oh, we know a lot of the same people, the vendors. Like I've been known as like the tech queen. And like, I loved all things technology and these relationships. And I already had a lot of the same relationships. I was already on the AI boat way before everyone else really kind of have gotten on that wave. And so I was talking about things from that perspective so early on. So for me, like he was the only person in the industry that I had seen doing something even remotely close to what I felt like I was already doing in my micro world. But he did it at such a much bigger level that I was like, oh, like I want to be him when I grow up. Even
Yeah. That's why, I say, pay attention to what you're doing, just because I saw that bond early on with you too. And, when you're navigating any type of terrain, any type of ship or endeavor, right, you really lean on, the people that you can trust, right, that you trust at a high level, that, have the moral authority to really execute on whatever it is that you need to execute on. And I'm like, that there's a connection there, and kind of where what he trusts in you so much and what you're doing. That's why, I just like pay attention to Kendall. It's going to navigate because he trusts her, and it's perfect for, kind of the shift in the industry, as we turned into a headwind, right? Mm-hmm. Because as EXP was gaining that early momentum, that happened overnight. Yeah. Right. 10 years in, and then it starts to gain the momentum. But once you have that, there is also an element of ROL, right? There is an element of return on luck, that we were positioned in the timing, and Gove comes over, or Gene comes over, Gove comes over, we come over, right? And it was just kind of like the perfect storm. So there is ROL, and yet the market made the shift 22, 23, wherever we kind of got into a headwind. And not saying that Glenn couldn't navigate the headwind. Of course he could. But you just get to a certain point, decades of navigating and building. Sometimes you're just like, let me get this dog in here. Let him handle it. Right. Some people are just built for headwind. And so I think it's just kind of everything lined up really perfect.
Yeah. I think it was a combination of things. I think one, Glenn has a lot of innovative, experimental, ingenuity. Like he's got that, like he's going to innovate, like, right. He is a true visionary. And I think even part of that comes a bit of, I would even dare say wisdom, right? That says, hey, listen, like my skill set was building this amazing engine, and it's taking off. But there's like this really big storm coming, right? And maybe the pilot, needs to shift a little bit, who can focus in that direction, who can come in with a clean, like a whole different mentality or mindset. Some people liken Leo to being a wartime leader,
wartime
right?
general versus peacetime.
Yeah, he's a wartime leader, and I think he really, really stepped up in that. But I think what also happened, ironically, around the same time, was Glenn got to shift and pivot to where I think his real interest at that time which was international. Because I remember being at the gathering by Housing Wire that April, right? I think right before, it was right before I accepted this position. In fact, I was in the middle of negotiating it. And so it was an April event. And I remember watching Glenn on stage and him talk about, and I recorded pieces of it. He said, the future for EXP, right now we're the largest brokerage, by agent count and transaction side. And that was true 2 years ago, as it remains to be true today. And he said, but the next level for EXP is to be the number one brand, right? Because a lot of people try to compare us to other brands, but they're franchises. They're different models than our model, right? And so, it's almost like comparing apples to oranges. It's like they're not really comparable, right? You can't compare a Remax brand or a Keller Williams brand with an EXP, and try to equate that to the same, because they're different models, right? So, but where he was going was, man, if we grew our agent count to this, a number he projected at that time, I think it was like 250,000 or something like that. He's like, we would not only be the largest brokerage, but we would be the largest brand in the US at that time. And he's like, and then, this was the next thing he said after that. And he said, and the path to that is international, is through international growth. And like, I'll never forget that conversation. And so ironically, 2 months later, he was able to pivot and lead the growth of international. And since, or maybe that wasn't 2023, that's 2024, sorry. That was because that was last year. So 2024, he takes over and he's leading international, and look at the phenomenal explosive growth EXP International is having, and that continues to have, because he went in and he disrupted.
Yeah.
And that's what he likes to do. In fact, I heard, if it ain't broke, break it.
Yeah, that's his mentality, right? That's what he's thinking. And I Kendall, I love it, right? I've got a couple guys in Portugal that I've been working with for now 3-4 years, and I was talking with Jay and Al about it just earlier this morning, because Jay was having a conversation with somebody in the UK, which is wild to even think, right? Like, we're having global conversations.
I love it.
And he's like, just talking about how much of a really kind of a shit show it is. And I said, hey, listen, just let them know that it takes years in that type of climate, because we're just now starting to see it in Portugal. And it's taken 3+ years to get the mentality of the brokers, the mentality of the agents, the mentality of the buyers and sellers. It takes time, but it's really cool to where it's starting to go. And you're so spot on. And I think too, Kendall, once you have an understanding of how real estate is done internationally, you appreciate the way it's done here in the States so much more.
Oh yeah, agreed. I mean, during the NAR talk, not that I want to talk about that anymore ever again, but during that time, it was always so frustrating to me, that people would often compare our model to other more broken models. And I'm like, we're not going backwards, friends. Like, to compare us to other models, if you speak to leaders in those countries, those models are even more broken than our own. So why would we compare that way? But to the original point you were making about the experience in growing international is that they're startups. I mean, they're literally starting ground up one country at a time. And we have to remember, what was it like? What did it take for Glenn to get us from where we started, to where we are today? Yeah. And so, are we going to go out and galvanize in those countries, one country at a time? Because if we do, that's how he got us here. He went and traveled the country. He galvanized people and leaders all over the country, one state at a time, like one stop at a time. And that's how he triggered and inspired growth, right? Yeah. And we just have to remember that it's easy for us to judge from afar, but go be boots on the ground. I mean, we've got EXP International coming up here shortly. With the time of us recording this and filming this, we're in June, and the event is in just a couple of weeks. If you want to see EXP International exponentially grow and take advantage of all of the momentum that EXP US and Canada have had, go be a boot on the ground and go participate in the galvanizing of the local people to help, create that momentum and to duplicate and replicate that momentum. That's what it's going to take. Yeah. Right? It's not going to be the staff at EXP delivering a world-class experience. I mean, that's going to be great, and that's what it should be. But we're going to need the heroes and the sheroes of EXP going out and, raising the bar and raising the attention and the intention.
You nailed what you said, and it's so true. When we're breaking into these countries, it is a startup, and understand what it takes to it's escape velocity, right? So it's just like to get it even up that momentum. It's so much force until you can get the plane up in the air. Yeah, but it is a startup. And so you go back to what do startups take? It takes intention over time. Mm-hmm. And like anything worth building, this is what like people need to realize. It takes decades, not years, right? Decades. And that's what it took Glenn, right? When this thing finally triggered 10 years, almost 10 years in before it finally just like caught wind. So everything takes time. Right?
And we're still growing, we're still learning, we're still pivoting, we're still agile. Yeah. We're still doing all of that.
100%. So I want to ask you this question, and we can kind of start to wrap up here, Kendall. Into the future, okay? Into the future, right? Having the conversations with Leo, where are we going? Yeah. Kendall, you have your crystal ball out. I know, talking a lot with AI, understand like what you guys are doing, really running to be the number one brand in all of real estate off of custom GPTs. Like, where is the future? Where do you see the industry? Where do you see how critical or in alignment or empowered, the company we are with AI? Like, take us out into the future.
So I always feel like that's a Glenn question when people ask me, but it's fun to hypothesize and to dream about what it could look like. And like I said, I'm a big believer of envision the vision. And so for me, I would say that we are definitely moving towards an AI-based foundation. Mm-hmm. I'll say that, right? There's a foundation of leveraging artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, machine learning. All of that is going to be a root foundation of, I think, everything we do in the country, not just in real estate. Yeah. And point to many things for that. I mean, even just, Lennar just finished building a community in Texas, I believe, with an AI printer, right? Like, that's freaking cool. And if you're not paying attention to stuff like that as a real estate professional, you should be. In fact, I wrote an article about this, and I talked about that. I talked about how, some of this blockage we have in real estate is because we're not leveraging AI like we should. Like, for example, permitting. Why aren't we leveraging AI to expedite and fast forward the permitting process, right? Like there's all these ways we can use it. But anyway, I digress on that piece. But I will just say this. I think agents, and everyone already, I think, says this all the time. It's not that AI is going to replace the agent. But the agent who leverages AI is going to replace the one that doesn't, right? That's commonly said. But what I want to remind people, it's not just about being an agent who leverages AI. It is an agent who is skilled in AI. And there's a difference between using it and treating it like a skill, like a muscle that you flex and exercise every single day. I have to tell you, Glenn has created an environment at EXP amongst the staff that we are invited, we are encouraged, and we are expected to leverage AI in our roles. Why are we asked to do that? Number one, I'm sure he believes it will streamline, create efficiencies, upgrade the output, right? But it's not just a matter of like ChatGPT or Gemini, rewrite this email, although that's great, or Fixer, right? Like those are all great ways to use AI. But I read a book recently that like my mind with how AI can help me do my business better, which is a different kind of question, right? How can AI help me? And so the book is called The AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods, I believe is his last name, Jeff Woods. And that's Jeff with a G. And I have leveraged AI in so many cool ways. And like I said, a lot of the leadership has at EXP. We've been, like I said, encouraged and invited to find ways to get away from a spreadsheet and into a tool. And hey, why do we need to buy a tool? Can we build it ourselves leveraging AI? Like there's this really cool, like, Lovable, like all these 8N or N8N, there's automations that can be created. Like, how are we not thinking about every day? How do I streamline my business? Another book I read was Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. How are you leveraging your time and your energy and your output, right? And giving your best if you're not leveraging AI. Like this morning, I operationalized an entire program leveraging AI this morning for a major rollout that's coming to EXP here soon. And it was not a fast thing. It was just more, I've learned how, it's a skill. Like I learned how to engage my AI at such a much higher level than perhaps most of my peers, because I know how to get it to work with me and for me. And
I love that.
As opposed to it just, because I do believe garbage in, garbage out.
1,000%.
That's any data, any tool, anything.
Yes.
You put bad stuff in, bad stuff comes out.
Yeah.
But when you teach it how to work with you, and you also have a skill, like you understand how it needs to work with you, how it can work with you, man, I am boom, 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 like built a whole playbook. And I
love it. And you got to, and we have to remember too, to be careful because, and it goes back to even what we were talking about in Seattle, is that, to your point, right? Like if you're not upgrading yourself, then you're only going to be putting out, because, custom, even, ChatGPT is confirmation bias. Kendall, that's the greatest thing ever. Let's execute on that. Right. So it hits you with that dopamine that it might be sending you down the wrong path. It could be the worst idea in history, but it's going to tell you this is the greatest thing ever. So being able to have that, one of the reels that has been sticking with me a lot lately was, gentleman asked PBD kind of his best piece of advice, and he gave three points. One about dominating business and life. The other was kids, and the other was marriage. The first point he said is, he was talking to a gentleman. They were at a party, and he's like, I want to be the best, like the best. And he said, let me show you something. And so they were up kind of elevated platform or second, and they were looking down over the party, and he's in just it was like the who's who, right? Top of the top, might have been, Fortune, 500 Inc. 5,000 event or something.
Yeah.
And he said, listen, he said, see all of these people out here that you say you want to be better than and successful. He said, they'll read 15, 30, 40 books max in their life. He said, keep going. He said, you never stop upgrading you. You never stop reading. You will blow by them because they only have a limited knowledge base that they'll just keep regurgitating, but you can keep going. And that with what Glenn's talking about, with what you're saying, and it comes back down, we're talking about core values earlier. One that is non-negotiable for me is continuous growth personally and professionally. Like the second that I know you're not trying to upgrade, the second I know you're not reading something, the second I know you're not consuming, trying to get better, I just don't have any room for you in my life. I don't. And it's to me, it's so, so important because like you said, that's the only way to continue to progress. Because on the flip side, and I think you and I talked about this in Seattle, I'm always pinging Stringer about it, is because you don't hear a lot of people talking about, but it's the consumer, the AI driven consumer. And are you pacing? Are they outpacing you? Like where are you on that spectrum dealing with the consumer that is AI driven? So that's just kind of interesting into the future with your crystal ball, how to continue to navigate those waters.
Yeah. And what you're saying, I love, agree, co-sign, all those things. And it reminds me of something you said, remind me of my team that we built, my husband and I built, that he now runs, which our mission is to have the best mindset, skill sets, tool sets. And it's something that like we obsess about, right? And I would, the mindset, right? Are you self-improving? Are you focused on personal and professional growth, your relationships, all those different things, right? Having the best mindset. And then skill set, right? Are you focused on your skills? And then of course, the tech nerd in me is tools, right? And AI is a part of all of that, right? Yeah. And you've got to pivot your mindset around artificial intelligence and AI. You've got to pivot your skill set around it, and you need to pivot your tool set around it. I mean, there's more than one AI tool out there. I would not go all in on just one. I would learn more than one. I would learn, what are the different things, because there's so many tools and they interconnect and they can speak to each other on at times. And there's real opportunity for you to become more consistent, more proficient, and more efficient in your business by leveraging AI. Like I'm a huge proponent of that, and will continue to be, because it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is. I love it. I mean, it's not a day that goes by, right? Like for me, and strategic thinking and books and consuming this, and yeah, it definitely is, man. And it's a very awesome time that we're living in. And it's you mentioned something extremely painful. I think if you could have navigated the short sell era, you can navigate anything.
That's what my husband would tell me. I don't know. My husband he's such one amazing partner and business leader. And but he is also like my biggest fan. So he'll always hype me up about stuff. I mean, he sees me better than I see me, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, it's important to have that circle around you that can see it. Kendall, you're absolutely amazing. Thank you for carving out the time, jumping in here, and just been a fun conversation. I was really looking forward to this.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
You're awesome. Thanks, Kendall. Thanks, guys. See ya. That's a wrap for today. I hope you got something valuable from this episode. If you did, hit follow and visit johnkitchens.coach for more ways we can work together. See you on the next episode.